Okay, I think we're good to go. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria. I work as an e-commerce manager at Politics and Prose Bookstore. And on behalf of the owners and everyone here, I'd like to welcome you to PMP Live with David Duchovny and Brad Davidson. We continue to bring the authors you love and their new books to our Politics and Prose community during these continuously weird times we found ourselves in. Thank you for joining us in this virtual format this evening, and thank you for all of your support over the past 2 years. Make sure to check our website for the upcoming events that we have in our stores. We look forward to seeing you all there. A little bit of technical things. At any point during the event, you can click on the link in the chat to purchase the Reservoir on the Politics and Prose website. Also, we have a limited number of exclusive chapbook called Poems Lyrics Flip, containing select lyrics from David's 3 studio albums, plus brand new poems, including one written from the perspective of the Reservoir's main character, Ridley. In reverse, the chapbook is full-color flipbook of one of the time-lapse videos David Duchovny created while writing the Reservoir. Additionally, you can ask the author a question by clicking on the Q&A button, which can be found near the bottom of your screen. And while we'll try to get to everyone's questions, we apologize in advance if we don't have time to address yours. We're also providing closed captions, and they can be activated by clicking on CC link right next to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Finally, we want to thank you for being here with us today. We're so thankful to our family of loyal customers for keeping our business and our spirits afloat. And now onto the main event. It is my great pleasure to introduce David Duchovny and his new book, The Reservoir. David is an American actor, producer, director, singer-songwriter, and a best-selling author. With an acting career spanning more than 3 decades, from an eccentric FBI agent who believed the truth is out there, to troubled novelist who in wildly unway can resist anything but temptation. David is a 2-time Golden Globe winner and a 4-time Emmy nominee. As a musician, he has released 3 studio albums. And on top of it all, he's a prolific author, and his previous novels include Holy Cow, Bucky Fucking Dent, Miss Subway, and Truly Like Lightning. The Reservoir is his 5th book, and having read it last night, I can say it's a splendid little marvel of a book. It follows an unexceptional man in an exceptional time. We see our present-day pandemic world and New York City through the eyes of a former Wall Street veteran, Ridley, as he looks back upon his life in his enforced quarantine solitude, wondering what it all means and who he really is. As reviewed in Publishers Weekly, Duchovny effortlessly brings readers inside the mind of a retired Wall Streeter struggling to find purpose during the COVID-19 pandemic. The unpredictable plot twists never overwhelmed the depiction of a flawed, lonely guy trying to maintain sanity in the midst of a world on pause. And this intelligent effort further burnishes Duchovny's status as a gifted novelist. David is joining us from New York, I'd say. David, hello? No?
I'm in LA, but
from LA. I'm sorry. Yes,
I'm joining you. That's okay. Yeah.
Hi. And David will be joined in conversation with his music manager, Brad Davidson. Brad has been an integral part of the entertainment industry since 1997. Serving as an executive at Columbia Records and Warner Music Group. He worked to break artists including Beyonce, John Mayer, John Legend, and Green Day. He currently owns Gang Management Group, a full-service management company focusing on touring, merchandising, production, and content delivery. He's a graduate of Afro-American Studies at the University of Massachusetts and is also a professor of music at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. Brad lives in Boston with his wife. Hello, Brad.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. And now, without further ado, please welcome David Duchovny and Brad Davidson to PMP Live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brad, I don't think she said that you worked with Jessica Simpson, who I'm seeing in the background there.
True. Yeah. She had to keep it brief. By the way, we should let people know that obviously I'm filling in for Tom, who couldn't be here tonight.
Yeah, Tom had a family emergency, so
yeah.
So we'll try to get him. We'll try to get him on another event at some point. But Tom Kapinos, the creator and showrunner of Californication.
Yeah. So thanks for making time to speak to everybody. Congratulations on the rollout of the book. It seems critics are very kind to it, as well as fan reception has been really great. And also thanks for the stylist tip. I'm using your stylist now, so I want to go with the same thing. Yeah. So let's just jump right in. And again, for people that are joining, we're going to have plenty of time for questions after David and I chat a bit. So all the questions that you're typing in, we're going to get to a little bit further into the session. But just jumping in, a novella is something that this is the first novella that you've done. You came out with the audio version of the Reservoir. What kind of happened to make you say, I wanted to take one content and sort of develop it and grow it into something different that you haven't done?
Well, I was looking at Justin Timberlake's career, and he brought sexy back, and I thought I'd bring the novella back. So I'm bringing novella back. It's my brand now. It was really just an idea, like any idea that I have, or that I'm going to write out in some kind of long fictional prose form. This was an idea like that. I assumed it was probably a short story when I started. I didn't think it was a novel. I didn't think it could sustain it, because it basically takes place inside a guy's head, and I didn't know how long I could tease that out. I didn't know where I was going necessarily. I had a setup and some things in mind, but I was thinking short story, because I've never written one of those either. And then it got to be the length that it is now, like 125 pages. And, I thought, oh, there's no way, I can't find there's not a magazine that can publish this. Because when I was writing, I thought, okay, I'll submit it to magazines and I'll publish it as a short story. And then, it just kind of fell in between this thing they call a novella. So that's what it is. But to me, it's a short novel. I mean, it's a prose piece. I try not to get hung up on the labels, but it's no epic, but it's got some, to me, it goes like philosophically and fictionally, it goes very deeply in a short amount of time. Like the length of the book has nothing to do, to me, with the intensity or the depth of it. I mean, that's my feeling anyway.
Yeah. Did you like telling a story in that zone? You know what I mean? Like in that sort of thing, 'cause especially coming off, Truly Like Lightning, which I think is the longest of the novels that you've done. Did you like the idea of telling a sort of a condensed story?
I guess, in a way, Truly Like Lightning felt like an epic, like my epic, and it would make sense that the next one would kind of just be a shorter kind of jaunt. But really, I don't think about the length as I'm doing it. I just think about the idea and what's the best form of that execution. And I didn't know where I was going. I like I said, I knew that it wasn't going to be as long as Truly Like Lightning, but it's just going to be as long as it needs to be, was my feeling. And I guess that's what it is. Yeah. And I enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed it. The part of me was, I think there's this bias against a novella, not quite a novel, so there was part of me that loved the idea enough to want it to be dealt with, as a serious work of fiction, and not just as kind of a tossed off thing. Yeah.
The book set during really the height of pandemic in New York, obviously something you have had real experience with. Just from a sort of a personal standpoint, even before we get into the book, like what was it like for you living through COVID and your situation? I know you spent some time in LA and some time in New York, and sort of what were the differences, and how was COVID different in different places? Did it affect your creativity differently, your mood differently? What was it like for you?
Well, I think, I mean, the beginning of the lockdown, the majority of it for me, the tensest part, the scariest part, before anybody knew anything, we were just kind of locking down. That first early spring to summer, March through June was entirely in New York City, in the apartment that's very similar to the one that is written about in the book, that Ridley is in, the main character. And it was claustrophobic, but certainly not as bad as what most people would have, because I did have a deck and I did have this amazing view that was really felt like my lifeline to a greater world, you know, because like everybody else, I was just sitting on my ass and, you know, looking at the world through my screens and just kind of catastrophizing in my own mind about what the hell was going on in the world. And that was my state of mind, just kind of this vertigo born of watching so much going on my screen, the world on fire. And then the converse of that, which is nothing at all was happening in my life, because we were just sitting in our rooms all day long. So there was zero at home and everything outside. And that's a weird state of mind to be in. And that was kind of one of the things I wanted to explore in the book, was how it feels to have all your relationships be virtual all of a sudden. And that's actually the healthiest thing you can do, is not have human contact with them, because we've all been bemoaning what phones and computers have been doing to our human relationships over the past 10 years. And the pandemic really brought that home, because that was the way we saved our lives, was through having screens. And that was the only relationships that we had. And I wanted to explore that through a lonely guy going through the COVID times in that apartment. I myself was with my son, so I wasn't alone, and I had wonderful human contact with him. But you know, for the most part, there were many people alone in rooms for many months, and I think that's an interesting story to pursue.
Yeah, I mean, loneliness is, you know, such a key to this story, and Ridley, how we all relate to him in certain ways. One thing that was interesting for myself during the pandemic is there were some relationships really just went on the wayside, and then some really strengthened. You talked about, you know, getting to spend, you know, a lot of that time period with your son, and you've spent a lot of time with him in the past, but did COVID specifically, do you think it helped your relationship in terms of you learn more about each other because it was a different experience, or was it just business as usual and you're used to seeing them as you normally do?
Well, I mean, there are parts of it that's business as usual, just because that's the way life is. Life normalizes really quickly. I think we find that. And that's one of the themes of the book, is that as Ridley gets deeper into his isolation, he remembers 9/11, because he's kind of thinking about, oh, we were here before. We had a catastrophe like this. We had a cataclysm, a worldwide cataclysm 20 years ago, and that was 9/11, and now we have it again. And the result of these cataclysms is we realize what's important. You know, we all come out of these things going, oh, now I get it. Now I understand that love is the answer, and it's family, and it's not money, it's not ambition, it's not bells and whistles, it's just right here. And we all agree on that, but then we forget it again. You know, in a matter of months after 9/11, that disappears. In a matter of months after, well, I think we're still in the pandemic, but, you know, after the initial lockdown phase of it ended, you know, we lose track of that vital human intense connection. And Ridley wonders why. What, you know, he wonders, why can't I live like this all the time? Why can't I live like there's a pandemic all the time, professing my love to people, professing my need for connection? same as 9/11. And the book is somewhat about that. As for, with my son, yeah, it was normal, but it was also, there was a sweetness to it because we were like in a cave together. It was just us 24/7. And you can make jokes about getting on each other's nerves, but that wasn't really the case. It was just like, yeah, we're going to hunker down and weather this storm. And that's what we're doing. And there's something kind of sweet about a father and son doing that, but that's not Ridley's story.
Right. It leads me to what we were talking about a little earlier. In your author statement, you talked about time-lapse videos being really like a daily affirmation. How did that come to be with you, and how did that impact how you were feeling?
Well, I just thank God for that view because it gave me an open expanse that took me out of just like the tunnel vision of the screens and of my circumscribed world now, just being in, a couple rooms. And it felt somewhat creative just to have found it on my phone and to put it in that place and to see the beautiful time-lapse photos that happen, and just to be, I'm not a religious person, but to see the majesty of every morning and the difference and the sameness, and Ridley kind of contemplates this, just how it's that sunrise is always different and yet it's the same, pandemic or no. And there was something, I guess, affirming and godlike about that. And Ridley is a guy in this story who sets out eventually. I mean, he's an average guy, but he sets out eventually to really try to find out the truth of all things, the truth of God, the truth of the 2020 election, the truth of 9/11, the truth of all these things that become conspiracies or not. But and the pandemic, the pandemic exacerbating our susceptibility to conspiracy, because we didn't know what it was about, therefore conjecture was welcome. We didn't know the origin of the virus. We didn't know what the virus was. It was all conjecture at first. And to some extent still is a lot of conjecture about it. And then this spiraling into the nonsense about stolen election and all this stuff. And all these conspiracies kind of swirl into one grand conspiracy in a lonely guy's mind.
Yeah, well, the thing that I thought was most relatable to Ridley is kind of that realization that no matter what your personality type, you're all kind of locked up to some point, and you're all sort of searching, but what's that balance between solitude and companionship? And, just speaking for myself, I'm a person that really likes companionship. I don't like to be alone a lot. But then when the pandemic came, I found more peace in solitude. What did you hope people would take? Is that what you were hoping people would take away from Ridley, or what were you thinking in terms of building that character?
I don't really think that way when I'm writing. It's kind of like a story or an arc interests me, and then I'll put a character or characters in that place and let them run around and see where they go and what they eat. So I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I was kind of mashing up Death in Venice and Rear Window, and that excited me. I thought, that's new. That's it's new by combining a couple of old things that I really love. So that excited me. And then when it came to Ridley's loneliness, that made sense to me, because obviously everybody was lonely at this time to a certain degree, or cut off or disconnected. And it was really about, in the end, the human need for connection is in many ways the human need for conspiracy. And that's what I came to. And that's what I started writing about. It's like, conspiracies are really just finding connections, and I don't believe in them actually, but I believe in the impulse. I believe in the humanity of the impulse. I believe in the beauty even of the impulse to try to put that puzzle together. Why are we suffering? why did this happen? Who did this? Well, my personal opinion is nobody did it, but it's hard not to succumb to that need to connect all the dots, even if many of those dots you're making up yourself.
Yeah, no, that's well said. You know, this book, each of your books has its own kind of thing, and we can get to that later. But the thing that stood out most probably about the novella versus other things that you wrote is I really had no idea where the story was headed. And I thought that was really interesting, and it really kept my attention. And you know, I didn't really know. I almost missed the actual last chapter because I thought it was going to end with like sort of a leave you hanging or maybe optimistic. And then the Charlie Chaplin song comes in, and then there's, you know, the last chapter, and then it's ultimately devastating. Did you know all along that was the ending? Because I feel like it was almost written like almost you didn't even know it was going there, but I don't know.
I didn't know. And in fact, the ending is something that I thought about not including. You know, there was something about leaving it in that mythic darkness or unknown that was appealing to me. But I also wanted to bring his daughter back in, and I wanted the reality, some kind of reality, to reassert itself. You know, just the mundane reality of life and death. So no, I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know when I started out, if I was going to write, you know, was this about a guy finding a girl in the pandemic? Was this about like, or was she a bad person? Was she going to ensnare him in something? Was he going to, you know, was she going to hire him to kill her husband? You know, all these things. I didn't know what kind of story I was writing at first, you know?
Yeah.
So it kind of started in a very mundane reality of this retired Wall Street guy trying to weather the pandemic alone, estranged from his daughter. And then at some point it just entered into like mythology. And I was happy about that. It kind of veered away from, oh, it's going to be this like rom-com type thriller, to shit, it's trying to address everything.
Yeah. Just to remind people that have just joined, I am filling in for Tom Kapinos tonight, who had to deal with a family emergency, and we are going to be taking questions probably in about another 10, 12 minutes. We'll start taking some questions. One thing, you know, when I read, and often when you listen to music, you hear somebody and you say, oh, I wish I wrote that lyric, you know? When I read your books, I wish I had more extensive language. You sort of casually reference religion, Greek mythology, and you know, you're obviously a very well-read person. Is that stuff that just sort of comes effortlessly, or do you have to research that more, or it's just you retain the information? Because it is, you know, it's impressive.
Well, like all art, it comes effortlessly after you work your ass off.
Right.
I think, yeah, I mean, the references that I'm making, whether they're to books of the past, poetry, or philosophical questions, none of that in this book came through research or flailing around for something. Those were all things that came to me as I was writing. I would have to then, you know, go check it out and see if I was remembering it correctly. Something like, you know, reference to the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. That's something I didn't necessarily know it was called that, you know, but I remembered seeing a video of this bridge just start waving until it just flew off, you know, some kind of weird convergence that happened with it, some vibration. So I wanted to reference it. But so then I just Googled, you know, bridge that waved and collapsed, and then, oh, there it is, the Tacoma Narrows. And then when I write about it, I just reference the Tacoma Narrows. So you think, oh, David just has that in his head, Tacoma Narrows. Right. But no, I just know it is that bridge that collapsed.
Right. So speaking and referencing music, there's a Robert Plant quote that you used at the beginning of the book. how did that come about to use that quote, which, you know, it almost fits perfectly, obviously, if you've read the book, but, and also, was that one of the bands that really influenced you when you started delving into your music career and writing songs?
Well, I was never a huge Zeppelin fan when I was younger. I'm more of a fan of them now, which is, I think, weird or interesting. But I do listen to them more now than I did when I was younger. And so Kashmir was my wake-up call, was my alarm for many, many years. Kashmir and Baba O'Reilly. I like to wake up hard.
I really like to hit the ground running.
I don't like to wake up smoothly, you know. So it's like, oh, Jesus, time to get up. And so Kashmir, you know, they kind of, Kashmir and Baba O'Reilly just kind of switched places as either my ringtone and my alarm. And I've always loved Kashmir, even when I wasn't a big Zeppelin fan. It was just that driving beat. And there was something mystical about it. You know, it was set in the Middle East. It was set in the desert, and musically, it felt, you know, cribbed a little from that place too. And it was just, you know, the lyrics were kind of, you know, vague, but mystical. And it seemed to be reaching for Kashmir being this place of knowledge, and you know, Kashmir was like Ithaca. It was like the end of the journey in some way. It was the place you could never really know, but it was there, and it was your job to go find it. And I used some of the lyrics as the original epigraph for the book, but then when I went to buy them from the publisher, I got cheap, and I didn't want to spend the $3,000 that they wanted for 6 lines of the song, and because I figured Zeppelin's doing okay, they don't need my money. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's my sense, is they're doing okay. And because I do believe in paying artists for their work. That's not what I'm saying there. But if Zeppelin was struggling, I would have coughed up the dough. So, but then I came upon this quote by Robert Plant about the song that was even better, because it was, instead of quoting the song, it was more like Ridley's feeling about, as he's discovering as he's delving deeper and deeper into history, into all the conspiracies and the lies and the mysteries, he doesn't know that he's big enough to understand it. He doesn't know that he's the right guy. And Plant is talking about how big the song felt to him. And, you know, this is a guy who's got, you know, arguably the greatest voice in rock and roll. And he's saying, I didn't know that I could sing it. It was too big for me. I was in tears. And for me, that was perfect for Ridley. You know, it was even better than quoting the song, because it was like, Ridley too is a guy that sees a truth as he's sick, as he's delusional. He starts to see things that he doesn't know if he's big enough to understand them or to relate them.
Yeah, it's funny because in hindsight, like, it definitely does work better. So it's nice how it worked out that way.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, it always happens that way.
Yeah.
Necessity is the mother of invention and all that.
Yeah. So doing a novella, first time thing,
or cheapness is the mother of invention. Maybe that's
exactly. So the novella was the first time thing, and then you couldn't really leave well enough alone. You had to make it a chapbook, which was the first time thing for you, as, you know, as part of this, which I thought was really cool and interesting. Were the poems and that you did as part of the chapbook, were they written as a part of this Reservoir release, or they were a collection of poems throughout different periods of time in your life?
They're just poems I had in my drawer, except for like the ones that I call Ridley's stanzas to Rona. Those, I think those I kind of wrote in character as Ridley, as you know, in his state of mind in the present day. So those are new. But all the other ones, I mean, some of them are 20 years old.
Yeah.
Some are 10 years old, some are 3 years old. Same with the lyrics. I included some, as you know, some from songs that I've recorded but not released, and one lyric that I've not even set to music, and then and one that we've not really recorded. So they were just a handful of lyrics that aren't accessible to anybody that has experienced my music or listened to my music. So I thought, this is just another angle. And this was Johnny Temple's idea, the Akashic, that very kind of a personal expression, and very kind of hidden in a way, because as I said with the lyrics, these are not songs that are available. These are songs I think, and I've told you that I really love a few of those songs.
Yeah.
And I do want to put them out, and they are recorded, but they haven't been put out.
Yeah. By the way, Akashic, the publisher, when we were talking about the timeline videos earlier, they did, some contesting around it. I thought I was following the contest. It was really interesting to see the different timeline videos that a lot of fans like submitted and stuff, and just seeing their angle on it was really some cool videos in there. It made me think of that.
Yeah.
So, I think, one of the things, and you and I are do work together and we're friends, but the thing that's always interested me most about you is your diversity as an artist, and you keep trying new ventures and shots, and this is now what, your fourth book, your fifth book?
Fifth, yeah.
Yeah, fifth. 3 albums, plays, film, TV, all that stuff. There's actually something new that's coming out now for the first time too, which is the Kepler book, which is your first sci-fi comic. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a graphic novel that I did with Dark Horse, and Philip Sebby's the illustrator. And it was an idea I had for actually a television show that I thought, well, it's so hard to kind of pitch a science fiction idea. I don't really have that many of them, but this idea I really loved. When I was growing up, I loved Planet of the Apes, and this is kind of like my entry into that world. And I find it's interesting in science fiction. You can really kind of comment on today's world in an allegorical way that if you did it, without the veil of science fiction, it would just seem heavy-handed or lame, and if you can find a world where you can contemplate things that are happening in this world, but have them play out in that world, it's another door that I wanted to walk through, especially having done the X-Files and being exposed to science fiction in a way that I never did naturally. Like, I didn't walk towards that stuff, except, like I said, when I was a kid, I did love Planet of the Apes. I loved Eric Von Däniken stuff. I remember Chariots of the Gods was a big series for me, a big series of books. I was gonna say I wanted to believe. I was gonna say that like I was just making it up. Yeah, no, I did. I wanted to believe that that aliens had visited our Earth and had advanced our civilization, and that's kind of something running through Kepler as well. So I think, to harken back to stuff that I loved when I was a kid, Planet of the Apes and Chariots of the Gods, I think Kepler's kind of in that tradition.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough where you were kind enough to share the early writing on it before there was art. And what I loved is really getting, when they announced it, I think it was a week or two ago, of the, you got to see some of the artwork. It really blended. Like, it was definitely a great collab. You could tell that, it was a good mix, which doesn't always happen in the graphic novel world,
Yeah, I guess I'm not I'm not very versed in the graphic novel world, but Philip Sebby did a great job, I thought, and he was a pleasure to work with. It's a long process, as you can imagine, because you're fine-tuning the text and the dialogue as you're trying to imagine the illustrations. It's this real kind of back and forth influence. It's like lyrics and music. It's more like lyrics and music than just writing a book or just writing a poem, because you have text and picture.
Yeah. we'll do one more question from me, and then I know there's a lot of questions, so we'll take from other people. Plugging the music here, your vinyl release is gonna be out for Gesterland, which is your third album. In the next, I think, 3 weeks, it's gonna be available. Some fans have been asking, and for the fans that have been asking, vinyl is basically backdated a year because of COVID, and there's only one company that makes it. So it's coming out. Vinyl's had a huge resurgence, you know, in sales over the last 1 to 2 years. Even it's growing. For you, who's somebody who grew up, you know, with vinyl, does it still feel a different sensation than a book or watching something that you did on the screen, like holding a vinyl? Is that a different type of sensation as a creative?
Yeah, it's like an archetypal feel for me because I did it as a kid. You know, all I had were records. Didn't have an infinite amount of them, like we have access to all the music now at a touch of a button, right? But then it was precious. You know, you get this vinyl in your hand and you get the liner notes and the lyrics, and you sit down and you would read those lyrics as you listen to those songs, and it was a whole immersive experience that I don't think we do anymore. So when I get our vinyl, you know, not that I could do that. I mean, I'd kind of be a jerk to do that with my own stuff, but I imagine somebody, and lyrics are important to me. I'm not one of those people that say the lyrics are incidental to the songs. I try to make songs that are interwoven between the lyrics and the music. So I like to imagine somebody sitting down with the vinyl and the lyric sheet, the sleeve, and, you know, just going through the songs. And you know, to me as a kid, that was a mystical experience. It was like reading the Bible. You know, you were trying to figure out the story behind the story. What does it all mean? You know, going over these lyrics, listening to the songs over and over, because that's all you had. You didn't have access to everything about the bands. You know, you didn't know who they were. You didn't know what their favorite color was. Well, you might know that, but, you know, you could make it all up. And that was fun.
Yeah. And now people are experiencing that with your album, which is really
well.
cool.
I mean, you know, I would hope that would be my favorite thing to happen. It was like somebody sitting down with the vinyl and lyrics and going, huh.
Yeah. No, it's happening. So let's jump into questions here. From Jessica, do you think this novel will be a post-pandemic historical piece in the future?
Oh, you know, it's not meant to be, but, you know, I guess in the sense, like in the book, I talk about how, and I mentioned it earlier in this discussion, how we kind of lose that fellow feeling that we get from catastrophe, where we feel the love after a tragedy. In a way, maybe it's a record of that kind of a moment when mankind was thrown back upon itself to try to have to pause. You know, everything paused.
Yeah.
As best it can. You know, life doesn't pause, but we paused it and search for meaning. You know, so I guess it's a record of one fictional man's search for meaning when his life was put on pause. So I guess it could stand in for all those times when our lives get put on pause, whether it's society-wide or just an individual, you know, person has a catastrophe and just kind of has to take a breath that lasts a year.
Yeah.
Or two.
Next question from Tina. In Miss Subways, Amir's ailing father dives into the reservoir during one of her visions, and in the reservoir, Ridley ends up in the same place. Is there any connection between these passages? Good question.
The connection is the lack of imagination of the author.
I wanted to ask earlier if there was like an Easter egg in it. I thought she just found it.
No Easter egg, just the fact that, you know, I've written, I guess three of the books have been based in New York. And actually there's a scene in Central Park in Bucky Fucking Den as well. So I go back to that well. But the scenes are very different, you know.
Yeah.
In the subways, it's more like Cocoon, where these old people are discovering their youth by swimming in the reservoir. And in the reservoir, it's beneath the surface of the reservoir where the key to all mysteries is. So I guess the connection is that I have this mythic sense of the reservoir in my mind, just having grown up in New York. Very weird to have a body of water in the middle of the asphalt jungle. And I guess I ascribe mythic qualities to it that it probably doesn't have.
Yeah, great. From Jane, did the COVID lockdown change your opinion of the ill effects of our ubiquitous technology that you seem to question and truly like lightning?
Yeah, I'm always questioning technology, you know, just not in the sense of is it working? It doesn't really work for me. That's another thing. I break all phones. Also, don't hand me your phone. Something in my body rebels against technological things. They know I'm afraid. You know, it's like an animal. Phones know I'm afraid of them, and they attack me. So no, I'll always be uncomfortable with it, but that's just a function of my age, the time I was raised. It's different for people that are born into this world. I don't mean to judge it out of hand. I just mean to discuss it and its possible effects on the way we think and live and love from my point of view as somebody, you know, I was told, like, when you're raising children, they can learn languages so easily. They don't learn, they acquire. And once you get past a certain age, you have to learn it. You can no longer acquire it. And I feel that way about technology. I learn it, but kids acquire it, you know. So they have a different perspective on it. And I guess I think my perspective has some validity and it's worth a discussion.
From Paula, not a question, but a comment. I don't actually have a question since you've talked about it before, but I'd like to say I wish you could adapt the Reservoir into a limited series, because that's a psychological thriller. I believe it would be even better than it already is. Thank you. So something to think about. Is that something you've thought about?
Yeah, something I thought about. But the question is, you know, what is it? You know, where do you lean? Do you lean into more of the thriller aspect? I think so. I think you could do it. It could work. It would take some finessing, but then again, it would just change it, which is great. I'm always for when you're adapting something to another medium. I love the changes. You know, you don't want to just cram it in the way it is as a movie, as a miniseries, whatever. I think it'll be fun. It'll be interesting. Does he work at a studio? Hopefully, the person.
This is Paula at Showtime Network. From Haley, hey David, what's your favorite Led Zeppelin album?
Probably two.
Two, okay. It's one.
But I have favorite songs on other albums. I mean, yeah, but
right. From Charmian, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. What is Catherine's Reprieve about? Can you discuss that poem?
That's a lyric. That's a song I wrote a few months ago. And hopefully will be part of album 4 when we get started on that. We're about ready to start, Brad, by the way.
Oh, good.
Just so you know.
Great.
And it's, yeah, I it's personal what it's about. I wouldn't say what it's about in this kind of forum, but I would say, because and that just goes to my sense of how songs work, because I'm always a proponent of saying it's not important what it means to me. The song is what does it mean to you? So if you can get back in line, or if you can cut the line and tell me well, it's not a song yet, so you're just reacting to the lyrics. So it's a tough question, but I guess it's about suffering. It's about living in the past and trying to get into the now. How suffering kind of freezes you in a moment and makes you paralyzed, and that, there's still a present moment to try to get to. I guess that's just off the top of my head.
Right. From Edgar, is there a dream project in any media which you have not been able to do yet that you'd like to do?
Yeah, it's Truly Like Lightning as a miniseries or as a movie, and I'm still hot on the heels of that, hot on the trail of that.
Yeah, it seems like Truly, and then this was one of my questions. You've had a lot of successful creative endeavors, and they all kind of hold a special place. Like, for example, maybe there's a favorite season that you did of Californication, or maybe a favorite movie scene or something you directed. Like, in terms of books, do you think Truly, if you had to pick one, like the plane's going down, you can only grab one book that you wrote, is that the one you're taking with you?
I would pick the book that's shaped like a parachute.
No, holy cow, then you can learn survival and like vegetation,
Yeah.
Okay. Since you from Mara, since you wandered into the story, how did you approach stepping back and giving form to the narrative?
That's just an effect of like wandering enough to see where you've wandered, and then cleaning up behind you, and making sure that you didn't wander off into dead ends that no longer make any sense. The surprise that I think Brad talked about, at least personally, when he read it, I was surprised too, and that's a fun thing for an author to. That was one of the nice things about just writing what I thought was a short story was I knew I didn't have this architecture. I knew I didn't have to define this architecture or figure out the architecture of holding up 450 pages of story. I just thought, okay, it's just one guy's mind. So the wandering was part of it. Wandering is kind of like the through line. The way we wander in our heads is kind of the through line of this piece.
From Pat, did you write a lot of music during the lockdown?
Did I write a lot of music?
Yeah.
Not as much.
We were making the album during a lot of it.
Not as much as you'd think, because making the album is one thing, because those are songs that are already written, and we're just producing them and trying to get them down. So yeah, no, I don't think I seem to write like songs in like 3-song spurts. Like I'll write 3 songs one week, and then I won't write a song for 4 months. So, and I don't think they have anything to do with whether or not the pandemic was going on. They're more, I guess my songs always seem to take origin in personal feelings. So the pandemic was less about that for me. So yeah, so no, I don't think I wrote a lot of songs during the pandemic, but I'm always afraid that I'm never going to write another song. So I hate discussing it.
All right, we'll move on. We'll move on. From Mary, David, did you read any?
Weird, like Brad, sometimes I have a page in my iPad on my notes where I've listed all the songs. And it's like, I can't believe I've written 50 songs. 50 songs, it's a lot of songs. So that's why I go, I probably don't have any more.
Yeah. What if Johnny Cash said that, though? David, did you read anything great during your quarantine?
I don't think so. I think I was like everybody else, just like transfixed to the screen, trying to figure out what the hell was going on.
Yeah, yeah. And a few people have asked this. Any advice for aspiring writers, and a little bit about your process of how you go from the blank page to finished product?
Well, I think I would go back to something I said earlier, which is, yeah, you want to make it look. I mean, personally, my approach to all art is I don't want to see the hard work. I know it's not really in vogue right now. We love to see people working hard out there. But I love to see people who work really hard to get there, and then they make it look easy. So it's a lot of hard work beforehand. And then it's really discipline of, if you want to write, you have to write. You can't just wait for the idea to strike. A lot of ideas can happen just like noodling around. It's probably how this one came about. Just kind of scribbling. And then all of a sudden you're into something. But I don't think that would have happened. I don't think that well without my hands. I don't think that well without writing. I can't get that deep without writing it. So if I'm not just scribbling around, I'm probably not going to think of something. So that's just my personal process.
Is there a style? And then Mariana asked this: is there a style? I read this question earlier, that does come easier or natural, whether it be songwriting, poetry, prose?
Well, prose is the easiest because, you know, there's no structural limit on it, really. You can kind of just stretch out and go wherever you want with it. Obviously, a song has a structure, very, very concise, usually has to rhyme, stuff like that. So there are limits that are put on it. Easier to work within limits, though. Poem, less rhyming, but, you know, has a certain kind of a form or sense to it. Again, those limits can be very freeing as well. So sometimes the limitlessness of fiction I love, and sometimes I also want the discipline of, okay, I got to rhyme, or okay, I got to get this done in, you know, half a page.
From Isadora: have you ever had an idea for a song when writing a book, or an idea for a story when writing lyrics, or they're two separate things and you don't ever cross them?
Well, I'm sure I've had other ideas when I've been working on certain things, or I've written songs while I've been writing a book. But, you know, I seem to like go through creative spurts. It just seems to be the way I am built. So there are times when I'm really creative across the board, and times when I'm not very creative at all across no boards. So
Yeah.
Which is why, you know, I get scared, like, oh, that's it, it's done, I'm dry.
Kelly wrote, who or what are your literary inspirations? And I know you've spoke many times about, you know, Virginia Woolf and Samuel Beckett and some of the, you know, people that influence you. Any new or more or modern writers that over the last, you know, even 5-10 years that have you found? Oh, there we go, The Overstory, Richard Powers. What's it about?
I'll let him tell you.
Oh, okay.
He's a great writer.
Yeah.
That's well known.
Let's see here, and time-wise, we have like 4 more minutes here. So I just want to get to a couple more questions. We'll get to like 2 more. From Pam, what one discussion question would you want asked in a book club group for the Reservoir? So if they were to just in a book club group for the Reservoir, what do you think would be an interesting topic discussion?
Oh.
And do you want to join the club? I just added it.
I don't know.
Tough one.
Yeah. I guess the question I've gotten a lot is like, when does this story slide into either madness or a surreal world rather than the real world? Is there a woman? If there's a woman, when is she real and when is she not real? What's hallucinated? What's not? And I can't answer that. And I think, and I'm not just being cagey, so I don't know. That's not the way I wrote it.
Let's see.
That's to say that the answer to that question is legitimate, whatever it is. I would say any answer to that question, you could make a case for it being true, even if they were different answers.
True. Last question from Whitney. The pandemic upended so many aspects of life, work, relationships, etc. For your writing process alone, like did it actually affect your writing process, or was it business as usual, just thinking the whole world's going to end at the same time?
The weird thing is when I'm writing, I live as if there is a pandemic. So I'd be indoors and not really being very social and just kind of pursuing an idea. But I didn't write a lot during the pandemic because, again, I feel I was shut down. I was shut down by nerves, by the desire for information and answers that seem to be changing daily. So I was watching the screens, and I have to say that that's death to my creativity. But again, I can't speak for everybody, but no, I wasn't inspired by any of that. I was consoled, maybe, but not inspired.
Great. Well, thanks for chatting for an hour. Great time filling in for Tom. I know people wanted to probably see him more than me, but I hope everybody had a good time, and we'll turn it back over to the moderator.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed the event. Remember to buy the book. You can go to our website, politics-prose.com, and you can also click the link in the chat to purchase the book and see the upcoming events we've got. Thank you, David and Brad, for being our guests tonight, and we hope to see you in person next time. Stay safe, everyone, and have a good night.
Okay.